Hi, I'm Marcy Petrini. I'm the weaving instructor here at the Mississippi Craft Center. Today we're going to talk about the weaving process, starting from winding the warp all the way to various kinds of weaving that my students are going to perform. We have an interesting class with beginners as well as more advanced weavers. The first process of weaving is warping. Actually, even before we start warping, we have to determine how long our project is going to be and how wide our project is going to be and which yarn we're going to use. Once we decide on a yarn, then we know how many threads per inch there will need to be. What Hannah is doing is carefully putting one thread at a time on the warping board. Each one of those threads is going to be a thread in her cloth. She winds them, making a cross in the middle. That cross is going to maintain the order of her threads once she puts them on the loom. She will wind a certain number of threads and then she marks them off so that when she puts them on the loom, she will know how many of those threads are an inch. So she counts them and uses that blue thread here to mark them off when there is going to be, in this case, 8. Now obviously the thinner the yarn, the more threads to the inch, and conversely the fatter the yarn, the fewer threads to the inch. But there's other things that determine the density of the warp, as we call it. For example, the pattern that's going to be used, and we'll see some of these patterns in a minute. And also the fiber. Some fibers shrink more than others. And all of these factors are taken into account in the design process. The chains that Hannah was making end up looking like this, and we take them off and tie them securely so that they will be safe as we put them on the loom. Depending on the width of the loom, they may be width of the piece, there may be one or more chains on the loom. In this case, for Caroline's piece, there's going to be 4. The next step is to put the warp on the loom, and what Caroline has done is she's attached her warp onto this rod and onto the back apron of the loom. Then she's placed what we call the lee sticks in the cross that she formed when she was making the warp. And then the next step is to take each one of the groups that she made while warping and distribute them on this piece of equipment, which is called a rattle. And this maintains the correct spacing of the warps during the warping beaming on process. The next step is to roll the warp onto the loom by winding the handle and with the threads going between layers of paper on the back beam. It's important to keep tension on the warp so that the threads will maintain their tension and their order, and the lee sticks help with maintaining the order. Darlene is slaying. That means that she takes each thread that has already been threaded and she places it in the reed at a correct spacing that she's determined based on the pattern and based on the thickness of the yarn. She will proceed from one direction to the other until all of the threads have been used up. Darlene is tying the warp onto the front rod in preparation for weaving. So she takes groups of an inch or so and she separates them in the front, makes a knot that is actually not a permanent knot, but is solid enough that the warp won't be undone. Jo is threading. That means that once she has placed the warp on the back beam, she will take each thread and place it in a heddle on each shaft of the loom until all threads have been exhausted. The order that she uses of her threads placed on the heddles is determined by the pattern that she has chosen. Charlene is weaving plain weave. This is the first step in learning how to weave, doing the actual weaving. And she's making a sash, which is the first project beginning students do. She has chosen her stripes and her warp. Plain weave basically is a going over, under type of intersection. Even though it's the simplest kind of weaving, it makes a very sturdy cloth and very serviceable, very useful cloth. Jane is weaving a modification of overshot. You can see that the pattern is forming some interesting designs with some rectangles and some diamonds. And this is classical designs in overshot, even though she's weaving a modification of it. Nancy is weaving a pattern called huck, which traditionally was used for toweling. She's using it to make a lacy shawl. It is a very lacy, wonderful pattern, but it shows up a lot better after the piece has been washed. And Nancy's using linen to give the fabric some good draping stability.
Hi, I'm Terry Dwyer, and I'm Marcy Petrini's husband. So when she goes to teach at various places, she'll often come across looms that have mechanical problems. And weaving is a sort of a peculiar pastime because it requires skills in design and also requires a machine that works. So this is a machine that doesn't work very well. So it's loose, and when it's loose, it comes in potentially at an angle, potentially it beats the cloth in an uneven sort of way. The solution to that is to tighten the bolts. So every weaver should have a few tools. So in this case, a wrench is needed to tighten the carriage bolt. A wing nut wrench is a clever invention because it allows you to tighten the wing nuts without tearing up your hands. And so when you go to weave, it weaves in a straight line. So the whole loom needs to be tightened, perhaps once a month, and every weaver should know what points to tighten on the loom. And every loom has bolts. They occur in slightly different places, but that weaver should know that there are places that you need to go around and just give it a little tighten. And so the loosening that occurs during the month's weaving will be reversed, and the whole loom will work as a good machine.
So now you've seen all the various steps in weaving, starting from the very beginning winding process all the way to some of the different patterns that are possible. So we hope that you will have as much interest in weaving as we do here.